Hello, this is me and Kai's History Timeline project. As you can see, it is in the form of a video. The timeline will be viewed throughout the video, but most of the information is in the audio itself. The timeline will show dates, birth dates, sailing times, etc. for most explorers. But in order to get the full information, you must pay attention and watch. So please be quiet. This project was completed by me and Kai Milani.
Leif Erikson, funded by a nearby storm in about 1000 AD. Even though that isn't very specific, that's the best information we can get. He was the son of Eric the Red, a Viking explorer traditionally credited with founding some settlements somewhere in Greenland, but only after he was banished from Iceland for 3 years for helping start a landslide and killing some guys because he was convinced their father had stolen magical beings that belonged to him, which sounds like the most terrifying fairy tale ever. Like, he killed some people over magic beans. But Eric the Red was said to join Leif on his first North American exploratory mission, but he left the crew after falling off his horse. He wasn't hurt, it was just he thought the fall was a bad omen, so decided not to go. But bad omens weren't enough to keep Leif from, continuing his plan and such. When they made their return to Greenland in the spring, they picked up yet another group of castaways on their way home. Thus, got a nickname, Leif the Lucky, apparently. He got pretty cool towards his Christianity after a trip to Norway, which resulted in him becoming a consultant of King Olaf Tryggvason. He quickly tried to convert his family and friends once he got back in Greenland. We're not really sure on whether or not that one worked out. Despite some claims that he went back to Vinland, a place which he gave the incredibly creative name of Vinland to because it had vines, and Vikings are known for their incredible creativity. It's generally believed that he didn't really go back. It's just vines there. 2 or so years after Leif's discovery of North America, which was largely accidental, Thorvald borrowed his ship and set out to see it for himself. In a couple of years, Thorvald and his men explored the coastal areas with which were populated by Native Americans, and a brief skirmish and Thorvald was dead. He is believed to be the first European to die and be buried in North America, which is interesting, I guess. It's not a very nice thing to be remembered as. It's like, I was the first person to die there. But he's going to take the earliest slot on our timeline if we're not counting Indians. So the next person on our timeline would be Zhang He, born in China and financed by the Ming Dynasty. Originally named Mahi, Zhang He was born into a Muslim family around 1371. He had 5 siblings, 1 brother and 4 sisters. Ma is a Chinese translation of Muhammad. In 1381, forces of the newly established Ming Dynasty conquered the last surviving Mongol hold in Yan. During this 10-year-old, Ma was captured and castrated, then sent to serve in the household of a 21-year-old Zhu Di, Prince of Yan, and the 4th son of the Emperor of the Ming Dynasty, Zhu Yahengzi. And in 1404, he was given the conferred surname Zhang, by the Mongol Empire for distinguishing himself by capturing the capital city of Nanjing in the 1402 campaign, and also defeating the city reservoir Zanglumbaba earlier in 1399. In the new administration, he was made Grand Director, or Taijan, of the Directorate of Palace Servants. Later, he was given command of the Chinese Navy, the highest rank of any eunuch in the history of China. Zhang He defeated Chen Zui, the most dangerous pirate of the time. Though he usually obtained his tasks through diplomacy, his large army also, easily beat up many Chinese enemies. His ships were huge. He ruthlessly annihilated several pirate groups that had long plagued the Chinese and Southeast Asian waters, including the previously mentioned unpronounceable named person, one of the most feared pirates to ever infest the seas of South Asia. Zhang defeated the fleet of Zui and killed 5,000 of his men, captured him, and brought him to China, where he was publicly executed. I mean, at a certain point, it isn't even a pirate anymore. It's like a mobile country on the water, you know? This guy had like a huge number of ships. So this obviously gained Zhang He quite a bit of reputation. In 1424, the Yongle Emperor died, and his son, Hongixi, the Zhongxi Empire, discontinued the sea voyages as he thought them too expensive. But Zhang had already finished 6 of his voyages by then. The following year, the Zhongxi Emperor also passed away, and his successor sent Zhang He and his fleet out again in 1432. His 7th voyage proved to be his last, and he died on the return. He was laid to rest at sea. Ah, good old Columbus. A good, pure, kind explorer who's famous across the world. He was financed by Spain and set sail to find India. But he made some calculation errors and, ended up in the Caribbean. He never really discovered the USA, part of America at least, and never knew it was a new continent, believing he had found the Indies and parts of India. But, even if you overlook the not so minor fact that millions of people were already living in North America, never really stepped foot on our shores, and didn't manage to make it to Florida or any area of the coast. But he did get to Central America, which is enough, honestly, yeah. You see, when he first stepped foot in Hispaniola, the first of the islands that he found that had people in it, he encountered a population of native people known as the Tano. He was notoriously friendly towards them, bringing peace and prosperity and happiness and friendship, technology for all. Actually, despite what your kindergarten teachers may have told you, and, what you probably already know, went a little differently. The Tano, as previously said, they were a friendly group. They willingly traded jewels, animals, and supplies with the sailors. And as Columbus said, they were very well built with handsome bodies and good faces. He wrote in his diary, "They do not carry arms or know them. They should be good servants." Yeah. They were soon forced into slavery and frequently mutilated. punished with the loss of limb or death if they did not collect enough gold. A portion of this Columbus was allowed to keep for himself. Between the Europeans' brutal treatment and infectious diseases, more the latter, but the former's fault, within decades their population was decimated, down to the hundreds, where it once was the thousands. Yeah. But, this was obviously an outlier on the, effects of discovery of native populations in America. Other explorers were clearly much better people. Please. John Cabot was a Venetian navigator and explorer whose discovery of the North American coast in 1497, under the instruction of Henry VI of England, was the first European exploration of the coastal north. John Cabot was born in Giovanni Caboto sometime around 1450 in Genoa, Italy, to Ganolo Caboto, a spice merchant. The name Caboto is translated as coastal trader. At the age of 11, he moved to Venice with his family. The goal of his first exploration mission was searching for a, drum roll please, a westerly route to Asia, like every other explorer early on our timeline. He successfully sought financial backing for an expedition, and the source of his backing is believed to be from Florentine banking firms. His fate and the fate of his fleet from this point onwards has remained subject to great argument among the historical community. It was believed that his fleet was lost at sea, but some historians are claiming that he managed to explore the east coast of Canada. Documents appearing to place him in London in the year 1500 have been located but not yet published. One of his main goals was to set up colonies, at least the goals of his later expeditions. This brings us to Amerigo Vespucci. He was an Italian explorer, and unlike what seems to be the majority of other explorers here, he wasn't a crazed lunatic who murdered everything that moved. Yeah, but that might just come from the fact that we don't know a whole ton about him. But he was an Italian explorer, a financier, and a navigator, while also being a cartographer. Born in the Republic of Florence, he became a naturalized citizen in 1505. But he was the guy who realized that, spoilers ahead, this wasn't India. It was a new country, or actually, it was a new continent, or two continents. He was born March 9th, 1454, and died February 22nd, 1512, in Spain. His nationality was Italian, and he had a spouse, Marina Cerezo. He had a good few siblings, and he sailed to America in 1499. It was later where his namesake came to be the name of a country. It was when another map maker was making a map and decided to, name this new country, continent, after Amerigo, because, he was the one who realized that, and sort of stuck. Cabral. Pedro Cabral was a Portuguese nobleman, military commander, and navigator. Cabral was the explorer widely regarded as the discoverer of Brazil. He was born in 1467 to a Portuguese noble family. He grew up very close to the court, and as a nobleman served in the council of King Manuel I and received the habit of the Order of Christ. Manuel appointed him chief captain of a fleet being prepared to attempt to sail to India following the route charted by Vasco da Gama. He sailed from the Tagus River in 1500 en route to India, but on April 22nd, the fleet unexpectedly sighted land in the west at 17 in south latitude. Cabral explored the coast and claimed the new land for his sovereign. He christened it Vera Cruz. Merchants, quickly attracted to the plentiful stands of Brazil wood, the source of excellent red dye, called it Terra do Brasil, and the name Brazil eventually gained acceptance. His largest achievement was, as previously stated, discovering Brazil, though he never made it to India. Vasco Núñez de Balboa was a Spanish explorer, conquistador, and governor. He is best known for having crossed the Isthmus of the Panama to the Pacific Ocean in 1513. He was born in a small town in the Extremadura province in southwestern Spain. This is incidentally the birthplace of Hernando de Soto, who happens to be another famous Spanish explorer and conquistador. He joined de Basta's expedition to explore the northern coast of South America in the year 1500. In 1510, Spanish navigator and geographer Fernández de Cisco prepared to set sail to Hispaniola on an expedition to bring aid and reinforcements to San Sebastian, a colony founded by the conquistador de Ojeda on the coast of Agrabah in the modern Colombia. Balboa thought this might be an opportunity to escape his creditors, who he owed a ton of money. He offered, and Cisco gained, who readily bought it. Balboa then hid himself in one of the caskets of grain he had sold in Cisco, along with his faithful hound, Leon Cisco. They were then carried onto the ship. By the time Cisco discovered that they were stowaways, the ship was already far into the sea. Cisco initially planned on leaving Balboa on the first uninhabited island he came across. But Balboa's earlier knowledge of the region convinced him otherwise. Cisco's expedition arrived at San Sebastian, where they found the settlement had been largely abandoned by colonists after hostiles had led to numerous deaths. At Balboa's suggestion, the colonists decided to move across the Gulf to the coast of Panama, where the soil was notably more fertile and the natives much less hostile. There, Vasco Núñez de Balboa founded in September 1510 the first permanent European settlement in the mainland of the Americas, and called it Santa Marina, La Enquina de Darena. Ugh, some of these names are just unpronounceable. Balboa was later arrested for trying to usurp Pradera's power. He was tried for rebellion and high treason in mid-January 1519. They found Balboa guilty of charges, and he was condemned to death, beheaded, along with 4 alleged accomplices, in the town of Ascela. Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama was funded by Portugal and the first count of Vidigueira. He was a Portuguese explorer and was notorious for being the first European to reach India by sea. He was born in Sines, Portugal, and died December 24th, 1524 in Kochi, India. His nationality was Portuguese, and his birth date, well, isn't near as exact as his death date, which is sort of sad. Historians can't really agree whether he was born in 1460 or 1469, but they are very sure of his death date. He had more than a couple children actually, and well, his missions to go to India weren't all that peaceful in meaning. He was basically a glorified pirate, and they didn't really influence trade very much. They just sort of stabbed people and made them pay to trade in all the cities they took. Now this brings us to a more interesting note. He basically discovered the concept most well known to a modern day society as angry birds. See, he had this really interesting idea. If you shoot at a boat with a cannonball, it gets destroyed. Now, they didn't have enough people to take a bunch of these sort of portside towns in Africa, but they had boats and they had cannonballs. So he thought, how about we shoot at the city? So he basically would put a big distance between himself and the city, be out there on the water, and just start shooting at the city until they gave up. This surprisingly, or unsurprisingly in this case, worked very well because people weren't used to being shot at from the ocean. You know, pirates usually didn't do that sort of thing. But he did set up a large span of trade control by Portuguese, but it wasn't really trade, honestly. The land of East Africa, the East African coast, was under Muslim rule at the time and was very important for the Portuguese expansion plans. At one point, Vasco da Gama went all ninja style and impersonated a Muslim to secure a meeting with a local sultan. He stayed in India for several months, and when he was asked to pay taxes and leave his goods behind, well, he taught us a very important lesson. When life gives you taxes, take hostages. He thought the Hinduists were Christians. How he made this mistake, we may never know. I mean, one religion includes multi-armed blue people, and the other includes immortal, resurrecting Jewish carpenters. Pretty big difference. But he still thought these were the fabled, long-lost Christians in Africa. In 1502, he made a second voyage to India. On this voyage, he came upon a ship carrying Muslim pilgrims. He looted the ship and killed them all. Yeah. His third voyage, and on a nicer note for the world, didn't end so well for him. He set sail to India with two of his sons and died of pneumonia. Yep. You'd expect with all that pirating, he would eventually get killed by some, people in Africa or something, but nope. Death from pneumonia. He has a capital city named after him, as well as multiple football teams, several ships, and a crater on the moon. And that is Vasco da Gama. Magellan. Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese explorer who organized the Spanish expedition to the East Indies from 1519 to 1522, resulting in the first circumnavigation of the entire planet. Completed by John Sebastian Elcano. In September of 1519, he set sail in his first attempt to find another route to Eastern Asia. Unlike the others who had tried this, he would actually become successful. There were over 270 men and 5 ships under his command. The ships were named the Trinidad, the Santiago, and the Victoria, the Concepcion, and the San Antonio. They first sailed across the Atlantic to the Canary Islands. From there, they sailed south to Brazilian and on the coast of South America. They continued sailing south, and eventually they found a passage that they were looking for. At the time, they dubbed it All Saints Channel, but nowadays it's called the Straits of Magellan. Finally, they entered into a new ocean on the other side of the New World. They called it the Pacifico, which means peaceful. Now that they were on the other side of South America, they decided to sail for China. There were only 3 ships left at this point, as the San Diego had sunk and the San Antonio had mysteriously disappeared. Magellan thought it would only take a few days to cross the Pacific Ocean. He was painfully wrong. It took nearly 4 months for the ships to make it to the Mariana Islands. 4 months, with the amount of food meant to last for a few days. Yeah. They barely made it and nearly starved during the voyage. After stocking up on supplies, the ships headed to the Philippines. Magellan became involved in an argument between local tribes, and he and around 40 of his men were killed in battle. Unfortunately, Magellan would never see the end of his historic journey. Only 1 out of 5 ships managed to make it all the way around the world. It was the Victoria, captained by John Sebastian del Cano. In September of 1822, 3 whole years after leaving Spain, they returned. There were only 18 surviving sailors, but they had made it the first trip around the world. Pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. This brings us to Cortez. Cortez had a very long name and was a Spanish conquistador who led an expedition that eventually caused the fall of the Aztec Empire. He was born in Medellin, Spain, and of Spanish nobility. Interestingly enough, he was known to be very sickly as a child. His parents actually wanted him to become a lawyer someday, but in 1501 he failed his law studies and wound up leaving the university. At 19 years of age, he joined Diego Vanquilez and Nicola de Ovano on one of their voyages to the New World. He moved to Cuba in 1511 and became a secretary for Diego Vanquilez, and later owned a ranch. He is best known as a Spanish conquistador and explorer. He led expeditions to the mainland where he conquered Montezuma and the Aztec Empire in a series of battles in which the Aztecs lost by a landslide, largely due to the fact that the conquistadors had metal armor and weapons and horses and basically every kind of advantage, despite the fact that they had severely smaller numbers. I mean, it's a band of a couple hundred to, at max, a couple thousand people fighting against an entire empire. Yet they still managed to win. Pretty surprising, honestly. Now we come to Verrazano. He is renowned as the first European to explore the Atlantic coast of North America between Florida and New Brunswick. This all happened in 1524. Verrazano was financed by a group of French merchants and Italian bankers. These were from Loins, France. Verrazano was in the service of King Francis I of France. Verrazano was Florentine, and in 1506 he moved to Dieppe in France. He spent many years as a pirate for France, preying upon Spanish and Portuguese sea vessels. It is said that he was responsible for stealing gold. This gold was worth 2 million, and this is from Spanish vessels alone. The aim of Verrazano's 1524 voyage was to find a sea route to the Pacific Ocean and Asia. Seems like we've heard this one before. His ship, the La Dupain, however, reached Palimpsest Sound Lagoon of modern North Carolina near Cape Fear. Yes, he was not the first and not the last in a long line of explorers who thought America was India. In March 1528, Verrazano left France on his final voyage. He still thought America was India at this point and was trying to reach it again. This expedition included his brother. They drifted to the Caribbean Sea, where they found a vegetated island near Jamaica. Verrazano decided to explore it. They were soon caught by cannibalistic native Jamaicans, who killed and ate them. While Jacques Cartier was a French navigator and explorer, and the first European to travel inland into North America. He claimed what is now known as Canada for France. Why am I doing this accent? I don't know. On April 20th, 1534, Cartier set sail under commission from the king. He hoped to discover a western passage into India, due to its incredible wealth and markets. In the words of Cartier himself, he was going to discover certain islands and lands where it is said that a great quantity of gold and other precious things are to be found. In other words, he was going to go try to find some islands where the natives had gold and kill all of them and take their gold. Or just take their gold. And later kill them all. Yeah. The way explorers usually do. It took him 20-ish days to sail across the ocean. Starting May 10th of that year, he explored parts of Newfoundland, areas that are located in modern-day Canada, or more specifically, the Canadian Atlantic provinces. During one stop, his crew slaughtered around 1,000 birds, most of them great auks, which were extinct since 1852. They're basically really big, cute penguin things. King Francis I sent him and some other explorers to lead ships to the discovery of new lands in the New World, and to murder birds, apparently. He was funded, as previously said, by King Francis I. Similar to most other explorers, he claimed land for his country that already had people on it, and killed stuff. But, that's what to be expected at this point. Hernando de Soto. De Soto was a Spanish explorer who was also a conquistador, who led the first Spanish and European expedition deep into the territory of modern-day United States. He was the first European documented as having crossed the Mississippi River. Hernando de Soto was born into a poor but noble family, like what seems to be all explorers. Invited by Davila, the governor of Darien, to join him on an expedition to the West Indies when he was 14, a surprisingly early age for exploration, he decided to go on the voyage. At 32, Hernando de Soto was named second in command to explorer Francisco Pizarro on his first exploration to conquer Peru. He then helped conquer Peru. He returned to Spain with much of the Incan gold in 1536. Despite them having secured a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of treasure, he only was rewarded with 8 ounces of gold, which doesn't really seem like much. He died, sadly, on May 21st, 1542, at the age of 42, in what is now Ferndale, Louisiana. He had become ill and developed a fever. His crew got most of the illness. I guess he knows what the Incans felt like now, eh? Francisco Pizarro. Francisco was an ambitious man, and he wanted to improve his lot in life. He had heard stories of the riches of the New World, and wished to travel there, in hopes of finding his own fortune. He set sail for the New World and lived on the island of Hispaniola. For several years, he lived as a colonist. He eventually became friends with the explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa. In 1513, he joined Balboa on his expeditions. He even became a member of Balboa's famous expedition in which he crossed the Panama to reach the Pacific Ocean. When Balboa was replaced as governor by Pendreas de Villa, Pizarro became friends with de Villa. When de Villa and Balboa became enemies, Pizarro turned on Balboa and arrested him. Balboa was executed, and Pizarro was rewarded for his loyalty to the governor. In 1532, Pizarro landed on the coast of South America. He established the first Spanish settlement in Peru, called San Miguel de Pura. Meanwhile, the Inca had just fought a civil war between the two brothers, Alfila and Huascar. The father, the emperor, had died, and both wanted his throne. Atahualpa won the war, but the country was weakened from internal battles. Many Inca were also sick from diseases brought by the Spanish, such as smallpox and the bubonic plague. Due to this, they were utterly annihilated when the Spanish came through. In 1538, Pizarro had a dispute with his longtime expedition partner and fellow conquistador, Diego Almagro. He had Almagro killed. However, on June 28, 1541, some of Almagro's supporters, led by his son, stormed Pizarro's home in Limba and assassinated him. Honestly, you can't really feel bad for him. Sir Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake was an Elizabethan pirate and seafarer who ended up being buried at sea in a lead coffin, dressed in full suit of armor. Second ever to complete a full circumnavigation of the globe, Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was also a secret pirate mission ordered by Queen Elizabeth against the Spanish in early 1577. He murdered, destroyed, cheated, etc. He was even a slave trader. This was partially due to numerous raids he made against Spanish ships and settlements on his voyages, taking many captives. Some Spanish mariners were so afraid of Drake that they believed him to practice witchcraft. He was rumored to be in league with Satan himself and possess a magical mirror that allowed him to see the location of all ships in the sea. He was feared across Spain and the ocean, and, well, he was one of the nastiest explorers on this timeline. We now come to Hudson. Henry Hudson was an English explorer and navigator. He lived during the early 17th century, best known for his explorations of present-day Canada, and of course parts of the northeastern United States. His goal, like many before him, was to find a route from Europe to Asia. What made him different, though, was in 1607, the goal of his voyage was to search for a North Pole passage for Asia. At this point, they already knew that America did not equal Asia, but they still hoped that there would be a passage from one to the other. On his first voyage, Henry and his crew, which happened to include his son, reached Spitsbergen, which is off the Greenland coast. An ice floe forced him to turn around and head back to England, but he did report seeing whales. This was important because whales would soon become hunted by whale traders in whaling ships after they heard of Henry's whale discovery. Henry Hudson and his crew tried again in 1608, but were turned around once more due to ice. Henry Hudson set out again in 1609, hired this time by the Dutch East Indian Company and financed by them. His ship was called the Half Moon, and he had a crew of 20. Cold weather forced them to turn south towards North America. During this expedition, he traveled on a river which would soon gain his namesake, the Hudson River. Robert de Sailly. Born November 22nd, 1643, he was a French explorer. He explored the Great Lakes regions of the United States and Canada, and later the Mississippi River and down into the Gulf of Mexico. He eventually claimed the entire Mississippi River, or while exploring it, for France. He was born into a moderately wealthy family in Rouen, which is a place in France. When he was younger, he enjoyed the sciences and particularly studying nature. Later, when he grew up, he eventually came to study with the Jesuit religious order, also known as the Society of Jesus, and eventually became a member after taking the initial vows in 1660. The Jesuits are a secret society for Christians, and a lot of explorers were affiliated with them. At his request, in 1667, after he had gone to Canada, he removed himself from the Society of Jesus under the reasoning of moral weakness. He actually never took the final vows to be within the order and actually became quite hostile when speaking of it. Historians sometimes describe him as a leader or priest of some sort, but this is wrong. He sailed for New France in 1666, and his brother Jean, who is actually a priest, had moved there a year before. Eventually, during one of his last voyages, he was shot and later died due to this. He was a Frenchman who claimed a bunch of land for France. Marquette, the man whose name is spelled nothing like the way it sounds. Marquette was a French explorer. His mission was to be a missionary in Michigan. Or, well, more specifically, New France. He founded Michigan's first European settlement after he had been working and teaching in France for many years. The Jesuits had assigned him to New France in 1666 to be a missionary to the Native Americans. He showed great proficiency at learning local languages. Huron was the one he was best at. He was funded by the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits, and he converted many Native Americans to Christianity. So all in all, his missions were largely successful.
Hello, it's me, Marshall again. I learned quite a few things while making this video, not all of them about history. I have attempted to make all the requirements. I put together the timeline. I got all the information on each guy, and it is in there as long as you've listened and paid attention correctly. I hope the students here learned something. You know, maybe I had a fact that somebody else didn't. Yeah, but that's just a hope. Yeah. And another important thing I learned from this is the fact that just because it's ambitious doesn't mean it's going to work out perfectly. It has been really fun, and, well, don't have much more to say. And despite Kai getting hurt, he did help quite a lot, especially in the beginning, in the data collection part where we got together all the information about the different people. So don't like give him any minus on grade for that. It isn't his fault that he got hurt. And, honestly, I slacked off a little bit halfway through myself. But I got this together, and sorry so much about its length. I didn't expect it to go on this long. Like, each guy only had a couple minutes devoted to him. It's just, I'm sorry. So yeah, I hope we got a good grade, and I'm just putting this here largely in defense of Kai because he did help. So don't take down his grade, okay? Like, well, by don't take down his grade, I mean like don't give him a penalty for not helping because he did help. So yeah, you have a great day, and I don't know. Hope I got a good score.